same per diem and the same, nobody gets anything different. So, and you've got to think about this as an ensemble piece. You know, even the lead character is played by two actors. You know, there's a child actor and a grown-up actor. So even the main character is not the star. There are two people doing that. I mean, you know, Satya doesn't come into the movie until over an hour, you know, which is not traditional for a lead actor. You know? So and that was the spirit that everybody brought to it, and that's the reason why we could make it. That everybody just said, okay, park your ego at the door, show up, do the work. You know? And there are some actors, you know, I mean, there are some very good actors at the very top of the Indian film industry, you know, kind of superstars, you know, and we did talk to some of them, and some of them were interested, but they had no familiarity with working in this way, you know, and they make films which are entirely made around them, you know, I mean, there's the 5 or 6 men and 4 or 5 women who are at that level, and they become everything in the film. The whole film revolves around them. And for them to be asked to give up all of that, you know, it's even with the best will in the world, it's difficult for them to do because they've never worked in that way. And they see, quite rightly, that their choices actually have a very big effect on the annual gross of the Indian film industry. You know, which films they choose to be in actually determine what films are hits and misses and so on. So there, I mean, if you are, you know, Amir Khan or Salman Khan or Shah Rukh Khan, if you're Priyanka Chopra or, you know, Kareena Kapoor or so on, the movies you decide to be in become the movies of the year, you know, and so they say we can't take the decision to take a bit part in a movie, you know, and in a way they were right not to do it, and we were right not to have them, because it would have distorted this ensemble casting, the feeling of everybody just pitching in, you know, and nobody is bigger than the character, you know, so people simply embody the characters in a way that's, I think for me, some of it, I mean, I think Seema Biswas, who plays Mary in the film, is one of the first people we cast, because we literally couldn't think of anybody else who could do that part, you know. And she embodies that character so fully, you know, that, I mean, she's already won 1 award. She won Best Supporting Actress in the Canadian Screen Awards, and I think she might win a few more, I hope, you know. But I mean, there are people who are so completely in the character, you know. I mean, I think Rahul playing General Zulfikar, you know, is another example of that, you know, quite extraordinary performances. And even though they're on screen for not that much time, you know, I mean, I think General Zulfikar, it's probably 12 or 13 minutes, you know, in the film, but you certainly remember him, you know, he's so vivid.
Can you talk about the Booker Awards? Why is that important, and how do you win 3 in different years? That's weird to me.
Yeah, I know. Well, the Booker Prize is just, you know, it's like I guess it's like the Pulitzer here or the Prix Goncourt in France. You know, it's the most, I mean, it's the most effective prize in I mean, it basically excludes American writers, so it's British and Commonwealth writers. It's become very powerful. I mean, the books that win the Booker Prize sell huge amounts of copies. The reason for the 3 of them is that I mean, Midnight Children won, you know, way back. It won in 1981, and on the 25th anniversary of the Booker Prize, they had a special competition to try and determine what was the best book of those 25 winners, and there was a panel of judges who chose Midnight Children as that. And then on the 40th anniversary of the prize, they had another competition to try and determine the best of those 40 winners, but this time it was done not by a panel of judges, but by a popular vote. It was sort of internet vote. And I won all 3.
I would have a question about the adaptation, and you speaking about kind of one person being meant for something.
Yeah.
Do you think that you were the only person that could adapt this? I think of like Philip Roth's novels or Jonathan Franz, and these tangential kind of genius works don't translate well to screen.
Well, I mean, you know, we all know the stories of the books that don't work.
Yeah.
You know, which may be more numerous than the books that do. You know, but I have this part-time professorship visiting professorship at Emory, and one of the courses that I taught there a few years ago was about the best case scenario of adaptation. The moments when it does work. And I think if you look around, there are quite a few examples of that. And I think if you think of, for instance, John Huston's film of James Joyce's The Dead, if you think of Martin Scorsese's film of The Age of Innocence, which I think sits pretty well beside Edith Wharton. You think about Luis Buñuel's film of Tristana from the classic novel by Galdós, or actually Satyajit Ray's Apu trilogy, which comes from a great classic of Bengali literature, and it's some of the greatest films ever made. Visconti's film of The Leopard, etc. You could come up with actually Volker Schlondorf's film of Günter Grass's great novel The Tin Drum, which I know that Grass was very happy with. Although he didn't write the screenplay, etc. But he was very happy with the result. So there is a best case scenario, where you can start off with a book that's rich and complicated, and you can find a way of making a rich and complicated film. So we thought, go for it. If they can film Anna Karenina, they can film Midnight Children.
How was it for you to come
you-
back 30 years later
Yeah.
personally and be able to open this up creatively? Something that's been already completed for you.
Well, difficult, because I was literally twice the age that I was when the book first came out. Midnight Children, I finished it when I was about 32. It came out when I was 33. Now I'm almost 66. So it literally is half my life ago, and very much at the beginning of my life as a writer. And I'm not quite the same writer that I was then. There are things that you do when you're younger that you do differently when you're older, and vice versa. I think in many ways it's a young man's book. I think it reads with the kind of energy and drive of a young man's book. And all of that I kind of rather admired in my younger self. But it was. I think the only reason I could do it is because I have so much distance from it. I think if it was a novel I wrote just now, I really wouldn't have thought I was the right person for it. But it was a way for me to ask myself, okay, here you are, you're at this point in your life as a writer, and you're looking back at this story you told a very long time ago, and you could make, if you like, a companion piece to it. Instead, I always thought of it not exactly as an adaptation, but as a thing by itself that would sit well alongside the original, And I said to Deepa, we should think of it as not exactly as a relative, as an adaptation of the book, but as a relative of the book. Think of it as a cousin, as a sibling. So there's hopefully a family resemblance, but it has to be its own thing. And for instance, I think the book is less emotional than the film. The book is less kind of nakedly emotional. The film as its feeling is right out here, and that's partly to do with how Deepa approaches film. She very much starts with, what is the emotional line through the book, through the story, and how do you hold on to that? And so it meant that the film is much more. The emotions are raw and upfront, in the film. In the book, they're kind of ironized and they're seen through comedy and this and that, And I don't think you cry when reading Midnight Children, but a lot of people cry when watching the movie. I'm happy to say.
Now, you've spoken of this as a love letter to India.
Well, that was,
So-
Deepa says that I said that. I don't remember saying it.
But is it?
But, well, it was born out of a love for India, that's for sure. That's to say, when I wrote it, I was living in London. I was worried about distance and becoming detached from the place that you were born and raised, and I wrote it as a kind of act of reclamation. Really, I thought, look, I want to claim for myself again that past, that heritage, that history. And for me, therefore, one of the great important things was the fact that when it came out, that people in India claimed it for themselves. So it felt like, I'm making an act of, reclamation, and then they were too, in the way it was read. So for me, it was that for what was important about it. It was saying, this is where I come from and this is who I am, and the fact that people in that place that I'd written about recognized it was very, it was more important than Booker Prizes and so on, the fact that it was received as it was in India. I remember this young man came up to me, well, same age as me, I was young then, came up to me in Bombay when I was lecturing. I went on a sort of tour like this when the book came out in India. And he said, I could have written your book, I know all that stuff. And I thought, that's a compliment, because he's saying that the book contains stuff that he recognizes as being truthful in his own life, in his own experience. The other thing was that lots of people claimed to be characters in the book, including people I'd never met. This woman came up to me and said that she was obviously the model for, I can't remember which, but like Auntie Emerald or something. And I said, but she said, but never mind, I forgive you.
Great relationship.
And I said, look, madam, you have to understand that this is the first time we've ever met, and how is it that I could have based a character on you when I don't even know your name? And she said, I don't know why you're going on about it, I've already forgiven you.
Can you talk a little bit about?
Sorry, this is all the time we have. He
oh,
needs to move on to later interviews.
I
I
thought you were going to give
apologize.
us kind of a wrap up.
I gave the 5 minute. I'm sorry if you didn't
I didn't
notice.
see
I
your
tried
5
to
minute.
give the
Right.
notice.
Well, I was just
but-
going to ask you about the Joseph Anton memoir, and would you like to see that adapted? And
That seems to be happening. I mean, touch wood, we haven't actually signed, but there is a production company that wants to do it, a British production company that wants to do it. And I hope this is going to work out. We're quite close to it.
who should play you?
Ben
Ben Affleck?
you tell me. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Maybe?
No, in this case, I think I will not do what I did with Midnight Children. Because it is so close to me, and also it's the most recent book, but it's my life. I think it's probably better that somebody else does it, who can bring a different point of view. I don't know who could buy. I made this mistake in Britain when the story was coming out, where some British tabloid journalist asked me, who do you think? And I said, in what I thought was an obvious joke, I said, well, it should obviously be Johnny Depp because of the close physical resemblance. and the next day, the newspaper says, Salman Rushdie thinks he looks like Johnny Depp. So I thought, never make jokes to tabloids.